It started as a message that felt personal, then turned into a scam that quietly drained millions from people who thought they had found someone real. Conversations stretched for weeks, sometimes months, building trust before money was ever mentioned. Then came the opportunity, framed as a small investment that could grow quickly with insider access. Victims weren't pushed, they were guided, step by step, into transferring funds they believed were safe. Some sent a few hundred. Others moved entire life savings into platforms that appeared legitimate. Globally, this scam has been linked to billions of dollars in losses, often hidden behind fake trading apps and emotional manipulation. By the time withdrawals were attempted, accounts were frozen, and the person on the other side disappeared. What looked like a relationship was never real. It was a system designed to convert trust into money. By the early 2020s, this pattern had already spread across countries, from the United States to Southeast Asia. The scam was often run by organized groups operating out of regions like Cambodia, Myanmar, and parts of China-linked networks. They used fake identities, stolen photos, and carefully scripted conversations to build what felt like real relationships. Victims were ordinary people, professionals, retirees, and even financially experienced individuals. In many cases, the same system behind this scam was later identified as pig butchering operations. People would spend weeks talking daily, sharing personal details, building emotional trust before any money was involved. Once trust was established, the scam shifted toward investment, usually cryptocurrency or forex trading platforms. Some victims reported losing tens of thousands. Others lost over $100,000, believing they were growing real assets. By the time doubts appeared, money had already moved through multiple wallets and accounts, making recovery extremely difficult. The approach always started quietly, through dating apps, social media, or even wrong number messages. Conversations were never rushed. They followed a natural rhythm that felt personal and consistent. Scammers introduced themselves as professionals, often claiming to work in finance, tech, or international business. Photos showed luxury lifestyles, travel, and stability, reinforcing the image of success and credibility. Over time, discussions shifted toward daily routines, goals, and financial habits. Then came subtle mentions of investing, framed as something they personally benefited from. They never asked for money directly. Instead, they suggested small steps to learn or try the platform. By the time the opportunity was clearly presented, the victim already trusted both the person and the process. Once the victim was comfortable, the scam moved into a controlled demonstration phase where everything appeared to work exactly as promised. They were guided to download professional-looking apps or access websites that mimicked real trading platforms with live charts and account dashboards. In many cases, these platforms showed small initial profits, sometimes within days, creating confidence that the system was legitimate and functioning. Victims were encouraged to start with smaller deposits, often a few hundred or a few $1,000s, just to test the process. When those early amounts appeared to grow and could even be partially withdrawn, trust deepened significantly. This stage was critical because it removed hesitation and replaced it with a sense of control and validation. Behind the scenes, however, there was no real trading activity. The numbers were entirely manipulated within fake systems controlled by the scammers. In investigations linked to cases like the FBI's reports on pig butchering scams, these platforms were found to be fully fabricated interfaces with no connection to real markets. By the time victims began increasing their investments into tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, they were no longer questioning the system, they were participating in it. As confidence grew, victims were encouraged to increase their deposits, often being shown larger returns that made the opportunity feel increasingly real and time-sensitive. Some were told they were accessing exclusive investment windows, while others were guided through step-by-step instructions on how to transfer larger amounts through cryptocurrency exchanges. At this stage, the scam moved beyond experimentation and became a full financial commitment, with victims moving savings, loans, and even borrowed funds into the system. Reports from agencies like the OAIC later showed that many victims were persuaded to send multiple transactions over weeks rather than a single large transfer. This slow escalation reduced suspicion, making each decision feel logical rather than risky. In documented cases across the United States and Australia, individuals lost life savings ranging from $50,000 to over $500,000 through these layered deposits. The scam operators often maintained constant communication during this phase, reinforcing trust and preventing victims from seeking outside advice. Behind the scenes, funds were rapidly moved across multiple wallets, accounts, and jurisdictions, making tracing extremely complex. By the time the system reached this point, the outcome was already locked in, even though victims still believed they were in control. The first signs of something being wrong usually appeared when victims tried to withdraw their funds after seeing large profits in their accounts. Instead of a simple transaction, they were told additional steps were required, often described as taxes, fees, or verification charges that had to be paid before release. Some were asked to pay thousands more, believing this was a normal part of accessing their returns. In many cases, even after paying these extra amounts, withdrawals were still delayed or completely blocked without clear explanation. At this point, communication often shifted, responses became slower, and the tone of the scammer changed from supportive to procedural. Victims began noticing inconsistencies, such as changing account balances, unexplained deductions, or system errors that could not be verified externally. Financial authorities like the AOIC later identified these patterns as common warning signs across romance investment scams. By the time victims attempted to verify the platform independently or consult banks, most of the transferred funds had already been moved beyond recovery channels. What initially felt like a controlled investment process started to collapse into a series of demands and restrictions that no longer made sense. The scam typically came to light only after victims stopped receiving responses or were completely locked out of their accounts. At that point, many reported the situation to local police, banks, or national agencies like the OAIC and ACSC. Investigations revealed that these operations were not isolated individuals, but large organized networks running coordinated scams across multiple countries. In several cases, authorities traced the infrastructure to compounds in Southeast Asia, where workers were forced or recruited to run these schemes at scale. Digital forensics showed how fake trading platforms were hosted on controlled servers, with manipulated data designed to simulate real market activity. Blockchain analysis later confirmed that funds were rapidly transferred through multiple cryptocurrency wallets, making recovery extremely difficult. According to FBI reports, billions of dollars have been lost globally to these romance investment scams, with thousands of victims reporting similar patterns. Some cases led to arrests and shutdowns of scam compounds, but the networks often reappeared under new names and platforms. What appeared to be a personal relationship was ultimately exposed as part of a structured system designed to convert trust into financial loss. What made this scam so effective was not just the technology behind it, but the way it combined emotional trust with controlled financial steps. Victims were not rushed into decisions. They were gradually led through a process that felt logical at every stage. The system removed friction early, showed profits at the right moments, and introduced barriers only after significant money had been transferred. By the time warning signs appeared, most victims had already committed financially and emotionally, making it harder to step back. Unlike traditional scams, this model relied on long-term engagement rather than quick deception. Investigations across multiple countries showed that the same structure was reused repeatedly, with only identities and platforms changing. This meant that even as individual scams were exposed, the underlying system continued operating elsewhere. For victims, the loss was not just financial, but also the realization that the relationship itself had been entirely fabricated. The pattern remains active today, evolving with new platforms and technologies, but following the same core mechanism of trust turned into money.